On today's episode on Front Row on Economy.lk, powered by Dialogue, we are going to have another interesting conversation on international relations, geopolitics, and also opportunity. And we have an eminent guest with us here today, Professor Gary Smith, who is the Vice-Chancellor for Global Engagement at Deakin University. Pleasure to have you, Professor. Just as I alluded to in my start as well, I think a lot of complex topics maybe to cover in a long time, but I think to kick off, I guess we're seeing a lot of things changing in terms of the geopolitics, be it with the US, be it with China, but it's sort of maybe changing things for things in Asia and maybe the Asia Pacific. How do governments or policymakers position themselves in this backdrop, and what do they have to do to put their national interests maybe in front?
Looking at an Australian perspective initially, we've had about 200 years of a strong British connection and strong American connection, but in the last 15 years we've been talking about the Asia century, the Asian century, and Australia sees itself as part of that. So for a while we described ourselves as an Asia Pacific country, and now the official line is we're an Indo-Pacific country, and Asia for us extends, from South Asia here right across into the Pacific Ocean region, and we see ourselves as fundamentally part of that. Now, the transformations there have been massive, as you're aware. For Australia, it was the rise of Japan and Korea and East Asia, and of course the rise of China is the massive game changer for everyone. For the last 20, 30, 40 years, and now the Belt and Road Initiative is taking China out, and China's leading a kind of globalisation move just as America is retreating. So America is America first, and China is on about expanding a more globalised but Chinese version of economic development into West Asia and further on and across the world, really. We're very much aware now, though, that Southeast Asia is on the move as well, and some of the smaller countries there are doing really well, like Singapore and Malaysia. And some of those might be models, maybe for Sri Lanka, about how you don't just have to be big to be a successful player. And of course, the rise of India more recently in the last 20 years has been very significant, and this part of the world is on the move. So there's huge changes in the economic underpinnings of the world economy, and Asia is becoming its own world, which doesn't need as much the rest of the world, and inter-Asian trade and investment, and these trends are very significant geopolitical moves.
Yeah, I think you just alluded to some of maybe the trends that are going on. What in your travels, I think in your role as well, I think you travel a lot of the countries, especially in the region. What are some of these mega trends that you see, and from what you know of Sri Lanka, are we plugging into some of these trends, or are we?
No, I think definitely are, and almost you can't not. So some of the mega trends, of course, are economic growth and development, and the rise of the middle class, and the necessity also to bring those who are not in the middle class along with the story. So countries are achieving economic growth, but they need to achieve economic growth or they'll fall into disunity and disrepair. And the trend is often very positive in the region, and Sri Lanka is has been in a growth momentum, particularly after the war, of course, as things have really got to move on. And those trends are everywhere and are transforming relationships. Power relationships depend on economic strength, and so power relationships change as economies grow. I think everyone's concerned also about a sustainable economic development, and they're not doing it in a way that undermines the future prospects of the country, and so getting the balance right between growth and a sustainable, environmentally and socially responsible growth is the big, it's the UN mandate for countries, and so that's a mega trend that's very important. So that's affecting everyone, and then sitting in that is a globally expanding trade and investment network, and in that network, it's not that there are so much winners and losers, but there are winners and those who win better than others. There are different levels of success in operating in this global economy. So we can't sort of not be part of it, I think, although some countries in the world try not to be part of it, like North Korea, Venezuela, and so on. There's a few outliers who are resistant to participation, and America seems to be pulling back, although it's an incredibly globally connected economy. So we think that won't last. So there's a major trend now sitting within that urbanisation, of course, and Today our university's been involved in conversations about how to have smart cities in an urbanising environment. People are moving into cities, we've got to design the cities well to be livable in the future, and this affects, I think we're all feeling that the planning doesn't keep up with the movement of people, and we're all a bit stuck. And even in Melbourne, where I come from, we're said to be sometimes the most livable city in the world, but the people who live there don't think so. And so one big traffic jam now, and we feel that public infrastructure has not kept up with the growth of the city and will not keep up, so it's a very grumbly, livable city. It's not happy.
I think you touched on the key thing, which is connectivity, and I think that's something that institutions like yourself are looking for in this region. How do you plug that connectivity with opportunity on the ground in markets like Sri Lanka?
Yes, I think this same rising middle class is technologically connected now. Everyone's working off a platform that lets them see what's going on in other parts of the world. So we're all part of a global communications sphere. There's instant understanding about what others are doing, and I think that that supports the kind of global engagement of our university. So at Deakin University, we've grown from, what you say, a local institution to a national institution in our significance and scale, and our operations in online teaching, which is a very important part of global opportunity now, is to be able to move high quality teaching into an online environment. And now we see ourselves as a global university trying to reach out, not just in the traditional way of being a great destination for students, which we are, and many thousands of Sri Lankan students will come and study in Australia. We're ranked by QS in, say, Melbourne as one of the top 3 education cities in the world, and that's great. But we're also very keen to get our own students to come here, and you know the New Colombo plan is an Australian concept around supporting Australian students to just get out of the country, go and visit, discover Asia basically, and with some government support. So that, and is named after the Australian Colombo plan of a previous time. So we're also very interested in research connectivity. We see ourselves sharing common problems, as we're discussing today around smart cities, but there's a whole common problems around the design of health systems, and there's some very good probably examples in this country of how to design a better health system than many other countries have developed in Asia, for example. So we're interested in engaging in research and collaboration to try and understand the problems we share and to try and solve them for the benefit of our communities. So very, very concerned research partnerships across the world are very important to our university and probably to all the universities in Australia. So that's trying to get win-win answers to complex problems that we're facing.
Sorry, I have to stop you there, but that's all the time we have for this.
Happy to stop.
This week's episode, but I think we covered a lot in terms of smart cities. I think importantly connectivity, and I think linking even to online programs, which is now kind of developing even in countries like Sri Lanka, and also touching on some of how Australia is positioning itself with the rise of Asia and how that really has implications for countries like Sri Lanka as well. So thank you, Professor.
Thank you very much
for being on the show, and for our viewers on Economy.lk, stay tuned for more insights like this in the following weeks.